Joining me now is the Chief Executive Officer of Women's Forum Australia, Rachael Wong. Rachael, Kohls has become the latest big corporate to rethink its woke activism. A number of regional queer festival organisers are in uproar over the supermarket giant's decision to pull out of queer festivals. Wagga Wagga Queer Mardi Gras President Holly Conroy said, "We're not talking about having nothing to do for the weekend. We're literally talking about saving lives." Rachael, is that how you see it? And why do you think a company like Kohls is rethinking its support of these events?
Look, I think Kohls and hopefully other corporates are starting to waking up to the fact that radical gender ideology, which is rampant in parades like this, is having a incredibly harmful impact in our culture, particularly on women and girls. And on children. And I think it's really interesting that that quote mentioned, saving lives, because this ideology, this dangerous and city ideology, is having incredible implications for the lives of many people throughout Australia, whether it be, lesbians wanting to hold their own events without men who say they're women, or whether it be on children being subjected to harmful medical transitioning practices, or women who are losing opportunities in sports, having men infiltrating their spaces. And so I think Kohls is waking up to this. I think other corporates are as well. And I know they've said, it's economic reasons, but I think after seeing what happened in the US recently with the election and the way that they focus on this issue, I think probably some of these corporates are starting to get worried that if they continue to back this harmful ideology, then it's going to come back to bite them.
And it goes beyond the corporate world. There's a fracture that is evident even in the LGBTQIA++ movement, where the LGB portion, there's many people who identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual, are not interested in the rest of the letters, the trans and asexuals and all the intersex, all the other letters, because they don't align, that their values, their political views don't align with that radical trans movement.
That's right. We've seen an incredible split in the movement. It's no longer a movement that's about equality and inclusion. And in fact, a lot of the time it's about the exact opposite of that. We work with a lot of lesbian women and gay men who are appalled at the way that their movement has been hijacked by these radical gender ideologists, and they don't want anything to do with it. And, for them, sex being real is actually a requirement for their own rights, their own beliefs. So it doesn't make sense, I don't think, for them to be aligned with this movement, which is having huge ramifications for them as well.
Now, let's listen to this rant from former White House press secretary turned MSNBC host Jensakis, who has called on the Democrats to double down on their pro-trans agenda, despite losing an election where this was a significant issue.
Another one of the lines that ran over and over again in those ads and throughout right-wing media is this idea that America is faced with a crisis of boys playing in girls' sports. Now, these ads created this perception that the issues of trans kids playing sports was dominating schools across the country, which is completely false. There are just incredibly few examples of transgender girls playing in youth sports. And when we see those examples, there isn't evidence that these kids are a threat to safety or fairness.
Rachael, what's your response to that?
Look, I just think it's incredible that she's minimising the issue like she is. Whether it's one girl being harmed by boys in her sport, whether in terms of actual safety issues or losing opportunities, one girl is too many. Clearly, it has been an issue in the US, and we've seen lots of examples of it happening. We've also in Australia seen examples. We have parents reaching out to us not infrequently. We have female athletes reaching out to us. So it's definitely not just a one-off issue. But even if it was, one girl suffering this injustice of having to compete against biological boys in her sports is too many. And the reality is as well is that there are a lot of girls and women and parents who are too afraid to speak out because the culture has made them feel fearful of being called bigots or transphobic or whatever. And so every story that we do hear of, there are plenty more of those as well.
Well, we seem to be left behind in this country as far as the debate goes. Of course, we've got people who are very interested in the issue, but our politicians overwhelmingly are too terrified, too ignorant to understand this is an issue that people care about. It's a consequential issue. And perhaps if they actually looked at some of the research that's come out of the US after the election, where they looked at the top 3 reasons why people didn't vote for the Democrats, and the top 3 reasons were inflation, the economy, the border crisis, and these culture issues. One of the most effective ads that Donald Trump ran was on this issue. It was hugely impactful. He ran it repeatedly. And Rachael, amongst swing voters, the most crucial subset of voters who decide every election, these cultural issues were number 1. That was the main reason they did not vote for the Democrats, ahead of the economy, inflation, and the border crisis. Do you think we're going to have an awakening in this country from conservative politicians to just how important this issue is, and how the mainstream, the great majority, feel like they're not being heard?
Look, I really hope so, Rita. I mean, a lot of these politicians, they know of the issues. Our organisation and others have been alerting to them for some time. And I really do wish that a lot more of them had, the courage of their own conviction to actually do something about these issues. But failing that, we'll take, them looking overseas, looking at the cultural changes that are happening, and hopefully drawing courage from that to make a change in this country when it comes to the overreach of radical gender ideology, especially when it comes to things like women's spaces and women's sports.
Just finally, Algerian boxer Iman Khif, who won gold at the Paris Olympics, is again threatening legal action after reports in France that leaked, allegedly showing medical documents that she, or he, I should say, has XY chromosomes. Rachael, the entire confusion around this would be solved by a simple mouth swab. So why isn't that being done? Why are we still debating this when there seems to be a great deal of statements from people, from boxing authorities, questioning whether this boxer should be in the women's category?
Yeah, look, it's incredibly frustrating. The Olympics was several months ago now. And look, a lot of the people who watched thought that this was incredibly unfair, including for Khif, because there shouldn't have been policies that allowed male athletes to be competing against women in the first place. But several months have gone by now. Khif has had an opportunity to explain what has happened in relation to the medical record. The Olympics is an opportunity to actually do something as well. No one has resolved the issue. So it's incredibly frustrating and disappointing, especially for the female athletes who had to compete against Khif. And now Khif is actually going after the reporters who are reporting on the issue, which, as we've seen, seems to be the weapon of choice, I guess, legal action for those who are trying to silence debate around these important issues. And, Khif also had an opportunity recently to speak at the Oxford Union about, the sport and about their involvement. And questions were put to Khif, which meant that Khif actually pulled out of the talk because those questions were about his medical records and biology. And obviously Khif wasn't prepared to front up to that. And I think that's incredibly disappointing.
It is disappointing. Some would say it's telling. Rachael Wong, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Rita.